Throughout history, people with disability have been ignored, hidden and in some cases cursed. Society's approach to dealing with this group was by isolating them in homes, institutions or prisons. Change has been painfully slow. In 1908, the Australian government introduced the invalid pension, and in 1913, Victoria's first special needs school opened. Then the two world wars saw the size of the disability community swell with thousands of returned soldiers. The demand was too great for our institutions, so new services were needed. In 1948, the deaf and blind activist and writer Helen Keller toured Australia, inspiring thousands and challenging the way our institutions operated. Her voice was fuel to the fire of change. By the 1950s, the disability movement was gaining momentum. The notion of supporting people to be independent rather than just providing basic care began to take hold. The first guide dog training centre was established. Veterans with disabilities were encouraged to take up adapted versions of various sports, and the first ever Paralympic Games was held in Rome in 1960. Improvements in healthcare saw an increase in the number of children with disabilities surviving infancy. Parents of children with disabilities started demanding more and began setting up their own workshops and training facilities. It was in this soil that the first seeds of Wallara were sown.
In 1959, my husband had recently become the mayor, and he was the youngest mayor, and somebody approached him to form a committee for intellectually handicapped. And there were no services at all in Dandenong for intellectually handicapped. The people just kept them in their homes and looked after them, and people didn't see them. My husband agreed to call a public meeting in the town hall, but hardly anyone came. And so Morris said, well, we can't form a committee if we haven't got people. So he offered our home to try to get people there. We formed a small committee because people in those days couldn't imagine where we were heading. Murray always lent a helping hand if he was requested. He was the mayor, and it was his job to look after the people of Dandenong. If he could see there was a need, he'd push on, and they persuaded him that there was a need. In 1960, we started at a house in Hutton Street in Dandenong. It was a house that the people had left, and it was going to be sold, and it was empty. And so one of the real estate agents said, oh, I'll get that for you, and so he did. Then the Scout Hall came up, so they said yes. Well, that was ideal because there was plenty of playground, and so we moved off down there, and from then we started to really get our knowledge of what we were doing. Before it was all blind, nobody knew what they were doing. We had to raise money for everything that we did in the community. If you wanted a kindergarten, you had to form a committee, raise funds to put the building there. The government didn't do it, and the community people were all helping by this time because the paper wrote it up very well, the journal, they helped. I'm so pleased that Dandenong has got a good name for something that's worthwhile. My husband Murray Jarvis, would be so proud of where Wallara has come.
50 years later, Wallara delivers services from over 30 sites and employs over 300 support coaches and staff. More than 500 people are supported to pursue their dreams and to live as independently as possible. Those partnerships with government, with people who care and with local businesses are just as important today as they were for Wallara's pioneers.